Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Reimagine Halal in Asia, a joint initiative by Collabdin and Have Halal Will Travel. We are aiming to provide a business insight and the potential of Asia as the biggest and halal progressive market in order to re-strategize the current business strategy. During the market turmoil, because of the pandemic, there's a demand for us to re-strategize the current strategy that we have in order to overcome the loss that impacting our businesses. And if you see from the news from CNBC, from any resources that you have, it's not a small amount that the business decide to shutting down. Others are struggling trying to recover the businesses. So despite the attempt from government initiative or any grants, there's still a need for us to re-strategize the strategy that we have in order to turn back and recapture the markets. So today we'll have a Farhan Ibrahim as a founder of D.I.V.E consultancy. So his background in engineering and his experience with the MBA education that he have create a systematic strategy in order to help his business venture and also helping others in their startup journey. Today, he will share a systematic strategy called D.I.V.E. So without further ado, let's welcome Farhan. Time is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Doris. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Now I shall start my presentation. Before that, let me share my screen. Okay. There you go. So just to make sure that everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
All right. So I will start off my presentation with two questions that I wish to ask. So have you been in a situation where you feel that there is a need for you to closely observe your employees? Or maybe in a situation where you spend too much time firefighting rather than moving your business forward? So worse still, the fire rekindles and then you are up solving the same issue all over again. So let me introduce myself. My name is Farhan Ibrahim. I am the founder of D.I.V.E Consultancy. So hopefully today, during this session, I will be explaining on a lean methodology called D.I.V.E, which enables your team to work more independently in contributing success to your company. So with an effective D.I.V.E, we will not have to worry about micromanaging or even firefighting. So a brief introduction about myself. I started my career as an aerospace engineer before pursuing my entrepreneurial journey, establishing D.I.V.E Consultancy. So for those who are unsure, and this is very important, we engineers, we eat and we breathe continuous improvement. So it is a very big part of our lives. So what made me start D.I.V.E Consultancy? Me and a few engineers, which now some of them became part of D.I.V.E Consultancy also, we asked ourselves, why is continuous improvement not everywhere? Why is it not in other industries? Why only for the privileged few? And is continuous improvement too boring? Or are we engineers too technical in our jargons that makes continuous improvement very hard to understand? So D.I.V.E Consultancy is on a mission. We are on a mission to make continuous improvement simple, fun, accessible to everyone. So to date, we have clients from various industries such as chain of restaurants, startups, and events company that engage us with business strategy and also to train the employees to inculcate the culture of process of continuous improvement. So let's get on with today's presentation topic. Okay, let's dive to change for the better. So during this presentation, I will explain on a lean methodology called D.I.V.E, a tool that if your team members are trained to perform, enables them to work more independently when any problem occurs. So if adopted consistently across your organization, it allows your employee to continue to contribute growth of your company by continuously improve processes, quality, sales, service excellence, to name a few. So this in turn will help develop the culture of continuous improvement with your organization. So here's the agenda for today. something short and simple, I will start off with explaining what continuous improvement is, followed by steps on how you can conduct a dive. And lastly, if time permits, I would be happy to take on any questions from the audience. So let's begin. What is continuous improvement? As the name goes, continuous improvement is actually a culture or a habit to continuously improve yourself. So I would call it a relentless pursuit of perfection in everything you do, or just to keep it simple, to keep on getting better. So continuous improvement, also known as Kaizen, originated in Japan shortly after the World War II. So Kaizen is derived from a Japanese word which, with a popular translation, that is change for better. So for those who wish to research further on this, do take note that continuous improvement and Kaizen are often used interchangeably in books, literature reviews, and reports. So it's worth taking the note. So Kaizen is commonly used in manufacturing industry. And guess what? It is the foundation of Toyota's success. So what continuous improvement does is that it focuses on improving activities that matters most to your customer. So now, are we ready to dive for the better? So now that you have an understanding of what continuous improvement is, let's start off with the dive. Let's dive to change for the better. So DIVE has the acronym DIVE, D-I-V-E, stands for define, investigate, verify, and ensure. So at the first stage of the dive, you will define a problem, followed by investigate your process, third, verify the solution, and lastly, to ensure that there are actually improvements in the solution which you have implemented. There you go. So before we start off with the first stage of the dive, let's see what Albert Einstein has got to say. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. So with that in mind, he believed that a key to productivity was actually to invest on your time in defining the problem as opposed to jumping right straight to the solution. So if you have a problem, the first thing you would think of is always a solution. But what he says is that spend time in understanding what your problem is. So I'm going to go through with it with you guys. So the first step of the dive is the define stage. So this is where you will create your problem statement. Start asking yourself, what's the problem that you are trying to solve? For example, the quality of your food. Followed by, are there any evidence to show that the problem exists? With the example of the quality of food which I've mentioned, you might want to gather some feedbacks from patrons. Then look at the frequency of how often you get bad reviews from customers. And lastly, assess the impact of your problem. Will the problem impact your future sales, your revenue, your reputation? All right. To add on, always remember that a problem statement has to be very specific. It cannot be too broad or too narrow. So once you are done with defining your problem statement, the next step is to actually form a dive team. Invite stakeholders you want to be part of your team. Conduct your first meeting to explain the intent of the dive and create a project charter to iron out the details of your dive project, which includes your project title, the team members involved, and the timeline which you want to complete your dive. So you're done with the first stage of the dive. The next stage of the dive is called the fishbone diagram. It's performing a fishbone diagram. So start off performing a fishbone diagram in the investigate stage of your dive. Okay, explaining a fishbone diagram itself may take another session. So there are a lot of online material out there that teaches you how to perform a fishbone diagram. So I will be very brief on this one. So in a fishbone diagram, you will look into factors that contributes to your problem statement. So there are six aspects to a fishbone diagram, and let's start off with environment. So environment, this includes anything outside of your company's control, so which may impact on your results. And then I will look at material. So the materials needed to produce your product or services. Next, men. Are there any staff-related issues that you are facing? Next will be method. You will consider the need of policies, rules, regulation, or even standard operating procedures. And last, measure. How is the process measured or monitored to evaluate quality? So, so once you are done with a fishbone, you've already identified the root cause of your problem. So it is now time for you to brainstorm for solution. It is very common at this point of time where imagination will go wild and sometimes the team may get steered away. So a rule of thumb that I follow is to follow the SMART method. Ensure specific. Ensure that your ideas are specific to your problem. Ask yourself, if you were to implement these solutions, would it be measurable? Meaning, once the solutions are implemented, can I measure the improvement? Next, are your solutions attainable or achievable? Is it even realistic? And lastly, do we have enough time to execute the solution? So the SMART method is very effective in guiding your team to set the right objectives for your solution. So at this stage, you have confirmed your root cause. You and your team has successfully brainstormed and selected the possible solutions. So one thing left. You are now ready to implement your solution. So this is the most important. I mean, the most important thing is yet to come. So the most important is the final stage of the D.I.V.E, which is the ensure stage. Okay. And this is, to me, the most important part of the D.I.V.E. At this stage, you will have to verify the improvements you have made thus far after implementing those solutions. So if deemed successful, you will document the improvement and establish a best practice within your organization. You may also want to present it to higher management of what we would call as a success story of implementing those solutions. So that's the final stage of the D.I.V.E. So now let's recap. So I've went through the define stage, the investigation stage, the verify stage, and the ensure stage. Let's look at define stage. Remember, create a problem statement and form a team. Remember that your problem statement has to be very specific. It cannot be too broad or too narrow. Next, at the investigate stage, perform a fishbone to identify your true root cause. The third stage, which is the verify stage, is where you brainstorm your solution and implement them. Remember to follow the SMART method so that your objectives are met. And lastly will be the ensure stage, where you document your success. And always remember, once you are done with the D.I.V.E. and if it's deemed to be successful, celebrate and recognize your team. So this is my last slide. And let's see what Benjamin Franklin has got to say. So without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it's really interesting concepts that you're teaching. Really appreciate about the concept of D.I.V.E. So coming back to several questions that we collected. So I know, I know some businesses are currently in turmoil and people are trying to do some strategy in order to solve the problem. So how do you see the trend of using this D.I.V.E. Will be recovering the businesses of all globally or probably in the context of Asia?
So I think that's a very good question. So firstly, when I came to my first client, it was a chain of restaurants in Singapore. It was during a very bad time. There was a lockdown, and what we did was I came in to help out. So I give them not a solution, but I was listening to the problems that they were facing, and there we are. We start to propose to build up the team, and that is when during that time the client actually gained confidence in expansion, and I was actually quite surprised that now that client of mine is actually expanding their businesses. They are renovating all their restaurants. They are building their own identity again. Reason being is because they are confident that their staff are able to execute that project themselves. So what Dive actually gives is it gives the team autonomy in executing a big project. So for business owners, giving autonomy to your staff is you start to get a bit like worried and stuff. But if you are confident, if they are equipped with the right tool, the right terminology, or the right method on how to execute a project, you as a business owner are able to start thinking forward. So that's how it is.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I believe that if we actually getting to the root case of the problem, we might solve the real problem because there's so much businesses probably they're trying to solve one problem that they see, but
Yeah,
when they don't realize actually there are several more important things, or probably when they solve one problem, it generate another problem which is they feel it's like the
exactly.
endless.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
so how do you actually foresee like innovate as probably the Asia leading consultancy for
wow.
conventional and a business? Because I know some conventional businesses when they think let's expand, there's always be having a problem and they don't really know how to bridge that. So how do you see your position as an innovate to solve the problem?
Well, that's a good question. I quite like that. So, especially in the food and beverages industry, so I see great potential in inculcating the culture of process improvement, because I would say continuous improvement is a very niche market, and as what I have presented is used mostly in manufacturing and engineering. But if it's being practiced across the board, especially in food and beverages or any other industries, what I can say is that it will do wonders. So we here in Innovate hope that we are able to inculcate this methodology, this mindset to other businesses other than engineering, so that we hope to see growth in the market.
Yeah, agree. So definitely is one of the most important thing. Yeah, so a lot of actually despite the small duration that we have, but this is really a good point that I'd like to share to the all audience, probably like the methodology of dive and how is it applied to not only probably halal food or probably for I don't know for probably another businesses, but it can be applied to many type of businesses. So yeah, really I really appreciate for your time and love your sharing about the dive. So I really hope that the dive concept can be applied to every businesses that currently struggling or even trying to get another way to find another profitability or probably another market, despite all the government's attempt on giving a loans or something else. It will be useless if our inner company will be there's no much
Exactly,
movement. Okay, thank you so much,
exactly.
Farhan, for your timing. I really appreciate your
Thank
time.
you. No
Yes.
worries.
So yeah, we thank you for attending our session with Farhan. It's really great point about Dive, and I really hope this point able to apply to all the businesses. So I really hope to see you in another session, and thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for other sessions. Thank you.